one thing is to look at the final product, what the movies show, but another one is to look at the industry in institutions behind it. This is why we are here. This is why I'm so grateful to Think Film, because we are touching beyond the appearance. We are looking at the system, and the system here is a problem because the incentives are still aligned that stereotypes about Roma sell.
What I notice is when I watch films about the Roma, or just that feature Roma and some, characters, it's almost as if the Roma are often brought in to add some colour, some excitement. The fortune tellers, the flamenco dancers, sometimes it's negative, like the seducers. So my question to you really is, are there films where Roma are essential to the plot and where you cannot just replace the Roma with some other ethnic minority and then it all gets dissolved? So perhaps, Timea, you're nodding in agreement. Do you want to break the ice again?
I think Zeljko is more passionate about
Okay, Zeljko, you.
No, I'm just a simple, everyday audience for the movies. And, one of the rare occasions when I felt as an individual person watching a movie where I say, oh, I can identify with this and I feel good about this movie, is Peaky Blinders. Because you have characters which are smarter, sharper, more courageous, and they're protagonists. Okay, they're mafia and they're violent and so on, but they are protagonists. Audience can like them. They cheer for them to win against Italian mafia, by Jewish mafia, by British mafia, by the Americans. It doesn't matter. At the end, you have also the Nazis in the game, but you can feel good about it. The emotion is strong, positive, unlike most of the movies that I watch. But here again, I think one thing is to look at the final product, what the movies show, but another one is to look at the industry in institutions behind it. This is why we are here. This is why I'm so grateful to Think Film, because we are touching beyond the appearance. We are looking at the system, and the system here is a problem because the incentives are still aligned that stereotypes about Roma sell. And ultimately there is a responsibility for reversing that, because Kusturica and others made a lot of money, made a lot of fame, and also brought a lot to the Cannes Festival, not only the other way around. So there is a responsibility here in this place to reverse this. And this is not just about changing one stereotype for another. It is much deeper game. It's about investing in structural change, in reversing how this institution is built. That's why we built European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, to make change systemic in the long run, not to have one actor or one story or one movie next to 1,000 other movies. So this place here is where we want to ultimately position a structural change, not a change of a character, not a change of a story, but an overall narrative and business incentives.
Thank you.
At the same time, I want to make sure that we understand that the stereotypes tell us much more about the imagination of the non-Roma in a really perverse, almost perverse way. We learn so much about these secrets and imagined characters that have nothing to do with us. And when we look at the real characters, how do they end up on the movie screen? We realize that this 1 millennia of living together really means that we Roma contributed to every single nation, and we contributed as a diaspora on the global level with our knowledge on the universe. Let's just say, okay, tarot, before the printing industry was discovered, tarot was the system of communication. Images were the system of communication. And then, of course, later moving images became a system of communication. So what I am trying to say is the characters are coming from this true history of living together, and Roma offering our knowledge, our skills in transferring our knowledge, also our knowledge about the planet, the universe, nature, and spirituality. When we hear Europe and Western society speak about mindfulness, this is something that has been a core to the Roma community. In other ways, you cannot survive under continuous history of genocides, evictions, chases, violences, if you do not develop spiritual practices of understanding yourself as one with everyone else. So these knowledges that are reflected in really essentialized stereotypes exist, and we need to make sure that we are able to say complex characters. We are able to express complexities, and this is why film is an excellent industry to break the stereotypes and break the structures that we have together.
Thank you very much. Amazing answers. Anyone else would like to contribute? Alina, Guillermo?
Yeah, I would say that, for example, for me, Peaky Blinders would not be a great example of something it represents me, because it's again caters to stereotypes, to Roma people doing wrong things, because as if we have it in the blood. I do understand the reasons for which Zeljko was mentioning it, and I hope we would be able to state many examples. And I myself, as a actress, producer, director, I'm happy and blessed to say that I put in the world the stories I needed as a child, that my community needed. And I'm happy to say that I was here in 2018 with Sola Mon Mariage, Alone at My Wedding. And for this film, I have to say that, yes, I did fight with the director. I did fight with all the team so that we will not have a stereotypical Roma film in Cannes. So yes, I did do what other actors might never do at their first feature, because usually actors comply. Yeah, they say, yes, director, what do you want me to do? But obviously for me, portraying a Roma in my first feature was not just a project. For me, obviously, it's a huge responsibility. And I knew for her it might be just a project, but for me, people would ask me questions. People would want me to not do the same as others and not just think of my role there. So my seat would be okay. And then I'm happy that this film is out, that we can see and we can rejoice in that we had representation in Cannes with Sola Mon Mariage in acid selection, and thankfully Gipsy Queen, for example, it's an example of a film that is not perfect, but it's a letter of love to the Roma community, to dignity, to what means being a mom, to what means being a parent, to what means not having chances, access to resources. So I'm blessed to say that as a storyteller, I put there the stories that I needed. But then what I have to say is that these stories, because they were not catering to stereotypes, they don't have the same open doors as other stories have. So obviously it's very important who is the main character of a feature. And to be honest with you, many people wanted Gipsy Queen to have just a German girl that was not Roma in the main character, and it would have been in Cannes. So basically, the business of the business says a lot about the success of a film. So it's not just the creative part of it. And in my case, as a director, when I approach producers, I need them to understand that it will not cater to the stereotypes, but I need them to understand that it's a Roma voice and that I should have artistic freedom in the script. that I don't want a co-writer non-Roma, because that obviously would, yes, there are many people with good intentions, okay? I worked with non-Roma directors that have good intentions. But when we don't have Roma as a conductor of the boat, you might never really reach the bottom of this unicity, this unique voice, the nuances that we need to put across there. We hope in I don't know how many years a Roma film not to be special, to be just a film like other films.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, actually, this is something that I would like to talk to you, because this thing of a film about Roma, what is that? Because a film, first of all, is a film. It's a form of art. Ideally, there wouldn't be topics. There would be the art, the characters, the emotions on the top of that. So, but it's difficult, of course. In this industry, there is this need to tag, and for the producers, also on the distribution and all the decision makers, to understand which are these selling points that are sometimes also very terrible for us as creators, you know. So maybe it's what you say, no? Maybe the future is a future when we don't see that in the top. Of course, we are diverse as humans are, no? But I would again repeat this idea that maybe also from the industry and as you said, from the institution and from the money sources, to understand what they are really doing, and really respecting the voices, the artistic voices that are in the film, to point, no, that we are not doing this. Even if it sells, maybe you need to hide it. And try to sell the film without using these selling points. It's a challenge because the industry is a machine, and maybe this looks like a very Quixotesque, but this is what I see. And when we were talking about the film I'm doing, it's not a film about Roma. Even if someone could say that very fast. Why? Because there is a Roma character, which is strange. Because they are. No, is not very represented, so it becomes something to put on the top, no?